So the big news coming out of Tottenham today is they've announced their pre-season tour, the squad list of who will be going over to Hong Kong and South Korea for Thomas Frank's first abroad pre-season tour. The big news is Destiny Udogie misses out. He's the player which really starting to become, I wouldn't go as far as say injury prone, but he does seem to pick up these lot of short-term injuries quite a lot. Um, there were reports early in the window that we were looking for a backup left back this summer, and I think this will only probably push the left back higher up the Thomas Frank's in tray in terms of transfer priorities. Obviously, you've got Jed Spence who can play at left back. You've got Ben Davies, but none of them really are natural. Davies may be more of a natural left back, although I think his best position's at left centre back in a back five. But yeah, not ideal. I think it must be. I wouldn't say when I say serious, I don't mean like long term, but I think it must be something pretty significant for him to miss the tour because obviously Thomas Frank will want to see the best of each players really, and the most minutes they can get, which is probably why we did the double friendly on Saturday. But yeah, disappointing news. Just in terms of, I feel like he's a player that really, really could shine under Frank, and I think Frank would have seen the performance he put in that first half against Reading and been really, really encouraged. So for him to not go now is, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a disappointment, but it's obviously not a doggy's fault. These are just things that happen as footballers. It seemed like last year that it seemed far more often than it should, but it just goes to show that um, regardless of how big your squad is or however many fronts you're competing on, these injuries will come and go throughout the season. So hopefully, if this is a bit more of a significant one, hopefully we can give a doggy a bit of a break, and then maybe if we could bring a left back in that time, or get the likes of Jed Spence or Ben Davies or even Mickey van der Ven to fill in at left back. Maybe that's what the immediate solution is until another left back comes in. Destiny Doggy wasn't the only absentee from this list. Alfie Devine, Dane Scarlett, and Mikey Moore all not travelling. Reports that they're going to stay back in England for now in the hope of a loan move. Obviously, with Ryan Mason managing West Brom, you wonder if any of those would maybe go to West Brom. Mason using his connections. I think someone like Mikey Moore, there seems to be a lot of interest from the Scottish leagues. We've seen Alfie Dorrington go there last season and won the Scottish Cup with Aberdeen. So, by all accounts, quite a good league to develop. And obviously, you have, depending on if it was Celtic or Rangers that were to take Mikey Moore, you'd have European football to offer as well. But I don't hate it. I think it's quite sensible, really. The departure of Moore on loan makes me think that Spurs are planning a left wing signing. Maybe that's more out of optimism than reality at this point, but it would be interesting because with Moore going, then on that left hand side, it feels like it's sort of a shootout between Tell, Odebear, and Son. And again, there's been reports with Son that he could leave after the Korea tour. Los Angeles FC interested, reporting Fabrizio Romano. Obviously, Hugo Lloris is there. I think that would be a nice little way for Son to end his career, really, just to go into the States and just sort of play without these narratives that have been forced on him for years at Spurs about not winning a trophy and that sort of thing. And now he's finally got that egg. Now finally got that monkey off his back. He'll be able to, just sort of just peacefully play out the rest of his career, especially in a country where realistically football or soccer over there isn't their main sport, so it would probably be a lot more of a chilled out life. I can remember around about 2015, the likes of Frank Lampard, Andrea Pirlo, Steven Gerrard going there, and then obviously later on we've seen Rooney and other Premier League players that have gone over there. So yeah, maybe that's just the nice little twilight of his career. Um, Obviously, it's just reports at the minute, and if he was to go, then I'm sure we'll talk about it in more depth. But what a player! His legacy is always going to be Bilbao and lifting that trophy. And I know the last couple of years he has slowed down, but my everlasting memory of Son outside of Bilbao was that opening game of the season for Nuno, where Kane was linked with Man City. Was he in the stadium? Wasn't he? And all of the noise outside and the general disappointment around Spurs going for Nuno in that summer, and all of the negative energy going into that. And then that summer, Son signed a new contract, sort of stepped up and took responsibility, and ironically scored the goal against Man City that game to give us a win. But ever since that game, he's just gone into that top tier of my favourite ever players in football. And genuinely, I think he is definitely in with a shout for my favourite ever Spurs players. Just such a humble guy. There's never any sort of drama surrounding him. He just turns up and does his best. And really, that's all you can ask for players, regardless of their ability. If they, I know, this diamond in the rough which needs to be moulded, or if they're just someone who's just getting the absolute most out of every grain of their ability, even if their ability range isn't that wide. Son's in that category of player, and for me at least, I think he should be talked about in the same way that previous generations speak about Glenn Hoddle or Jimmy Greaves or Danny Blanchflower and these sorts of players. But because for me, he is a legend, and that would just be the one word I associate with Son. If he does if he does decide to leave this summer, and I'd like it to be MLS, if I'm honest. It doesn't make much of a difference to me, but with I feel like it would be a bit sad seeing Son in the Saudi League. Not that I'd watch it, but in the Saudi League West League, which is not that reputable outside of the cash incentives of playing there. And we've seen a lot of players have had issues in Saudi, the likes of Jordan Henderson. So yeah, I think if Son was to go to Los Angeles to link up with Hugo Lloris, again his former teammate, I think that'd be quite nice. Be interesting to see if they have any sort of debacle like they did in that Everton game in lockdown, which was one of the more entertaining parts of for me, just a really insufferable Amazon documentary. And that's probably just because we were utter crap that season. But on the topic of disappointment with Spurs, there's always room for more. Morgan Gibbs-White, not happening. It's been over 3 weeks now since it was mooted that he was gonna. Why am I saying muted? That's just one of them words that's only ever used for transfers. But I digress. Morgan Gibbs-White not coming. A really weird video, and generally from Forest, the socials, which, to be fair, if you're just keeping your best player, why would you not celebrate that? Do you know what I mean? But the overemphasis on Mr. Marinakis, and how when the tweet that they put out, it was saying that Marinakis was handing him the contract or rewarding him the contract rather than the club or the manager or the recruitment team. That just felt a bit weird, but I just like to nitpick at the small little details of football. I would have just loved Morgan Gibbs-White, and I know I'm going to contradict myself in about a minute's time, because I feel like football fans sort of have this idea of like this position needs to be first, and then this position, then this position in the window. Whereas if you get all the positions you're after, by the end of the transfer window, but they're not necessarily in the order that you wanted them, then that's a good window. Um, Having said that, if Gibbs White isn't going to happen and Spurs have got big money to spend, not that I think he's attainable, but I'd really, really love us to test waters for Adam Wharton. Again, it's a player that we were looking at alongside Ashley Phillips, who were both at Blackburn at the time. And I think we went for Phillips, but then didn't go for Wharton, which, look, with scouting, you get some right, you get some wrong. But there's been some fantastic talent come out of the Championship in the last 10 years. The likes of Jack Grealish, Jared Bowen, Ivan Toney, Ollie Watkins, all these sorts of players. Um, but yeah, I'd really like Morgan Gibbs White to have become a Spurs player, but that looks like it's not going to happen. And I know a lot of people will say, "Oh well, it's maybe not the position we need straight away," and that's fair enough. But this maybe felt like a bit of an opportunistic deal, and it sort of feels like if he ever was going to sign for Spurs, this would have been the opportunity to do so. But look, I'm pretty sure he's Forest captain. He's going to stay there. He's going to play European football, and the chances are he probably will get a move next summer. But I don't think it'll be to us. I think we're now he's now probably out of our price range, at least. Like history would suggest that. That when these sort of price goes up, that's sort of when we sort of seem to back out the deals. On another front, just in the last 20 minutes, I've seen that Lille are apparently very keen on Anthony Kinski. Anthony? I don't know. Antonin Kinski going to Lille on loan. Um, I'm pretty sure I've seen earlier that Lucas Chevalier, I think he's called, the Lille goalkeeper, has now agreed to sign for PSG in the last 24 hours, which is maybe where this has come from. Interesting, really, because I don't hate the idea of Kinski going out on loan. Not least because Brandon Austin, I think, was fairly solid whenever we've seen him last season, and I think he's a player which will, especially as a goalkeeper, the more games he plays, the more comfortable he'll get. That's not to say that it would be linear and it will not have a bad game ever again, but weirdly, if I'd be totally against this if it was Fraser Forster as our third choice again, just because Forster's a good goalkeeper, but it feels like he's that sort of, I don't want to say previous generation, but he's more of a goalkeeper than the sort of modern day sweeper keeper type. Um, but yeah, we'll see how that one goes. And then finally, in the transfer window, I'm not going to get pre-annoyed. I'm not going to get pre-annoyed because a lot of people see it, stuff on Twitter, and they get pre-annoyed because we've not done this yet. I don't know the exact date the transfer window closes, but when it slams shut, as as it always does, not that it can ever just shut normally, that's when I make my judgments. At the minute, I'm looking at our team and I'm thinking, if Moore and Son are to go, I'm immediately a little bit worried about that left wing position, not least. I believe in Odegaard and Tell, but Odegaard seems to be suffering from injuries last season. Tell he hasn't been in one specific position for Spurs. He's sort of been between that left wing and striker position. So I think if Son was to go and Moore was to go, I'd expect us to maybe make an addition on that left hand side, whether that's, I don't know, names that have been linked previously, like not Adam Wharton, Johan Wissa, sorry. Maybe, but again, I'm not going to speculate. I think there's probably players that none of us are expecting Spurs to go for, good or bad, that probably will move to Spurs this window. It just seems to be the way. DM, I think we do need a DM. There's been links with Paulinho. A lot of people have been saying about he's not a good enough progressive passer, and that's sort of why Bayern want to get rid of him. And even though that is the profile we need at Spurs, Frank can adapt. He can adapt to multiple tactical situations. whether that be in formations or even generally if we're like away from home or anything like that. Um, the A lot of the stuff I've seen reported by the German media is that the reason he's not really worked out at Bayern is because of quite a lot Bayern are facing these teams who, because Bayern are obviously the scalp in the Bundesliga. A lot of these teams are sitting back, defending in deep blocks, saying you have the ball, you try and break us down. 95% of the time it doesn't work. I'd say as someone who doesn't watch the Bundesliga a lot, but with Spurs, I don't think we're in that top tier in the league where teams will think the only way of getting something is just to camp 11 players behind the ball. I think a lot of teams would have seen how we were last season and thought the best way of defence is attack against Spurs, and I think that will certainly be the case. It will be in the Champions League as well. So there'll be some games where he'll probably be very, very good. Maybe like away from home in a big game where you just want someone to win the ball back and then pass it on to someone else who can get us up the pitch. And there'll be times where we might maybe have a Sunderland at home where they'll be camped in, or a Burnley at home, and we'll be struggling to break teams down, and that's when people probably get frustrated with someone like Paulinho. My number one pick would be Adam Wharton, but obviously, I've stressed before, I don't think we'll get that done. An alternative, I quite like Douglas Luiz, I really do. The only thing is, I've seen him linked with such a wide range of clubs this transfer window. It makes me think, is he as good as I think he is? But I'd probably trust my gut on that, just based off of him being a pretty significant part of Villa's midfield in the last 5 years, really, barring last season. But yeah, I think left wing, left backs now become a bit more of a priority for Destiny Udogie. With Destiny Udogie going, so maybe left wing if there's departures. I think we still could do with someone in the 10 ideally. Maybe like a bit of a cheaper alternative, someone like Bilal El Khanous at Leicester last season. He was quite good in the 2 games that we played against them, and yeah, by some Twitter accounts that I follow, seemed to be a bit of a shining light in a fairly dull Leicester team last season. But again, we'll wait and see with Spurs. I'm not expecting all of that to get done. I think there'll probably be some sales maybe towards the end of the window, or no, in Spurs it'll probably be a loan and then option to buy, that sort of thing, which is still technically a sell. But yeah, work to do for Spurs. I think this pre-season is going to be important in sort of gathering where certain players fit into the hierarchy of the squad. I think Vuskovic, I stressed it in the last podcast, I really think he could become a solid squad player this season. But also, you have to think, realistically, Kinski, I couldn't have seen him going out on loan. And if that is to happen, then that would probably suggest that someone like Vuskovic, there wouldn't be that need to rush him back into the team. But we'll see what happens. There's still a pre-season tour to go. There's still transfers that may happen, transfers that may not happen, both in and out. And there's still a long time before the opening game of the season, and more importantly, the end of the transfer window. So I'm not going to get pre-annoyed. I'm just going to see how it goes. And just be sitting here waiting for some good news. And until then, I'll catch you in the next one. At the Spurs.